The OSG Sports app is up and running on your Android or iPhone. All you got to do, install the OSG Sports app and listen to our podcast from college football, soccer, lacrosse. Let's get this done. Get the OSG Sports app today.
Welcome to the College Football Debrief with your host, Anthony Goldman and John Wilkerson.
And we thank you, Tommy Palmer, and welcome to the College Football Debrief. John Wilkerson, Anthony Goldman. We're talking college football, and we're glad you're listening to us on whatever podcatcher you enjoy, whether it's our host network, Spreaker.com, or Spotify, Stitcher Radio, iTunes, SoundCloud, wherever you catch your podcast. We're glad you're listening to the College Football Debrief. And we've got a lot to get to in the debrief because it was a very, very interesting week of college football. And Anthony, we want to start in the Big Ten because Illinois pulled off the big upset. Second week in a row we've had a big upset. South Carolina over Georgia, and now Wisconsin losing to Illinois. Great performance by the team we adopted 2 years ago.
It's about time that Lovie Smith came through, isn't it, John? I mean, everybody was so excited when he got to Champaign, and this has been the year that people said, you know what, it's time for Illinois to move on, and they still may move on, but if they do move on, they always have that one Saturday, the third Saturday of October to remember. What a win for Illinois. And, you know, the thing about this, we're going to talk Wisconsin, I'm sure. Everybody's talking about Wisconsin, but that was a great game plan by Illinois in this game. The fact that they knew Jonathan Taylor was going to get his yards, but they were able to hold him enough. They held him to under 140 yards, and they really exposed Jack Cohn. I mean, Jack Cohn had a hard time breaking down that zone defense. And at the end of the game, you know, the field goal that Illinois made to win the game, that drive was set up by an interception from Jack Cohn. And I thought the Illinois defensive coordinator and the coaches deserve a lot of credit for the game plan they had in that. And the fact that Illinois just kept fighting and was able to get down there and hit a field goal, you can't say anything but good things about Illinois in that game.
Well, the thing that impressed me with the Illini is when they had to make plays, especially in defense, they were able to do it. And a lot of it, you pointed out, was how they defensed Jack Cohn. And he was confused throughout the game. And then when they had to make plays on offense, they were able to get it done. When you look at the stat sheet, Illinois' side, it's not impressive, but when they had to get it done, they were able to do it. And that's usually when you start winning ball games.
Well, on the Wisconsin side, you mentioned Jack Cohn. I mean, they had 2 turnovers in the fourth quarter. You know that's going to hurt your team, especially in a close game. But talking about Illinois and the resilience they had, John, don't forget Illinois were missing arguably their 2 best players in this game. They lost their receiver, Ricky Smalling, who's the most explosive player on their offense. And then early in the game, they lost Oluwale Batiku, who's their best pass rusher, a defensive end. He was gone in the second half. So you're without your 2 best players, and yet they still kept fighting. And the end of that game, the fact that they kept driving on that last drive, and they were kind of weird, to be honest, on the clock management part. I actually thought they were going to hurt themselves and screw up the clock management, but they're able to get it to a 39-yard field goal attempt, and James McCourt, he hit it right down the middle. I mean, what can you say about that situation? Team? Yeah, absolutely. Now, let me say this. This was obviously a look ahead for Wisconsin. This is a time of year when injuries and fatigue combined with looking ahead can bite some top 10 teams. And as we get into our previews in our next segment, there's going to be another top 10 team that I think goes down this week, which I'll give that a hint. We'll talk about later. But you're going to start seeing these now. You're going to start seeing these upsets week in and week out because this is right when the wear and tear of these football teams have kicked in, and some of them are getting ready for the stretch. So this is where trap games pop up.
Now for Wisconsin, doesn't necessarily hurt them for the college football playoff. If you're going to get the loss, get it now. However, here's what they've got ahead of them, Anthony. They go to Ohio State. Then they host Iowa, Nebraska, Purdue, Minnesota to finish out the season. Nebraska and Minnesota are on the road. So they only got 2 home games left. But they got mighty Ohio State. at the Horseshoe this week. So this is, that talk about timing. I mean, we probably it's okay to lose right now, but not before you go to the Horseshoe to play Ohio State, and then you got to host Iowa.
Well, the good news for the Badgers, if they win out, they're in the playoff. And the reason why is because the bad news is they have a brutal schedule coming up. They beat Ohio State. We forget this Illinois loss. And I will say this, okay. Now, if you're an executive of Fox, you are crying at 3:30 on Saturday because this ruined your big headline marquee matchup for this week. I mean, this took all the air out of that balloon. However, if you're looking for some silver lining for Wisconsin, you really get to play the underdog card now. I mean, now everyone's talking about how bad they are. They're overrated. Jack Cohn's not a big-time quarterback, can't win a championship. This defense can't play in the clutch. They're hearing all this negative talk. So Paul Chryst will not have a problem motivating his team this week. So if you're looking for silver lining, I guess that's where you can find it.
Well, I think you're right there that Fox Sports is probably upset that their big marquee matchup didn't happen. And then you talked about Illinois' game plan on defense. Lovie Smith is also the defensive coordinator. So all the credit, I guess, to Lovie Smith for the win and coming up with a defensive game plan.
By the way, that facial hair makes him look 72 years old. Like, he looks so old with that facial hair.
Well, you look at him when he was the head coach of the Chicago Bears, and now I think you're right. For those of you who watch 70s comedy TV, look at Lovie Smith, and he kind of looks like Grady from Sanford and Son, don't you think?
I was just about to say that. Yes, that is exactly who he looks like.
Well, you know what, Anthony? Great minds think alike.
Yes, they do. We're going off the rails. Where you want to go next?
Let's go to a conference I'm very intimate with, or used to be intimate with, and that's the ACC. Atlantic Division, it's Clemson. I mean, for the conference, it's Clemson. But when you look at the Coastal, what has changed? I mean, Virginia right now, 3-1 in conference, 5-2 overall. They're the only team that hasn't won the Coastal in the last 6 years. So it's fitting the pattern. But when you look at it, Pitt is right behind them. Virginia Tech, Duke, North Carolina, all have a shot. Georgia Tech's upset over, I guess it was an upset over Miami, but probably it wasn't. I mean, they're even in the mix. Everybody's still in the mix in the Coastal, and it's just wild again.
Yeah, this division really hurts this conference. And I know that we like to have fun and we like to talk about, the wacky ACC Coastal, and it's fun to spin a wheel and pick a winner and always pick the underdog in a conference matchup, Coastal versus Coastal. But the truth of the matter is it really does hurt this conference. And here's a question, John, and I fully do believe this. I mean, Clemson, they're the bell cow of college football. Everyone right now is poking holes in them, and I get that. But at the end of the day, they still have the respect of the country, and people still deep down feel like they can win the national championship. My question, though, is, and I still think they can get in, but if they were to trip up and get a loss, how much is this conference going to hurt them perception-wise trying to get over that one loss? Because right now, you look at the Coastal, I mean, it's bordering on a joke, to be honest. And there's a lot of good coaches in the Coastal, so, I mean, I hate to use that word, but Duke right now, with all those freshmen and sophomores that are playing, look like a contender to win the Coastal. They could not win another division in college football. Let's just be honest.
Yeah.
Pitt is a mess. And yet Pitt,
the defending champions.
Yes, barely made a bowl last year and are the defending champions of the division. They could win it again. Virginia Tech 2 weeks ago is going to fire their coach. They could win it. Mac Brown was predicted to go 2-10. He could win it. I mean, you already mentioned Georgia Tech, and we know what happened with them in the Citadel. And then Miami, I mean, every time they've been on TV this year, they've laid an egg, but yet mathematically they're still in it. I really think this week is important for Virginia. I think this week they play Louisville.
Right.
A Louisville team that is not very good, let's be honest, but a Louisville team that really everyone is a fan of because of how hard they play and how well they're coached. And I thought that they, despite the score, I thought they had a good showing of themselves against Clemson. They fought with all they had. This team fights for this coaching staff, and you got to start wondering how much longer can they fight. This is an interesting game with Virginia because Virginia, they look like they may have turned up against Duke. They may have finally lived up to expectation. They played angry, and if they can continue that, then maybe they can get some respectability and run away with this division. But I think that this conference right now is really hurting, and I think the ACC Coastal is a big reason for that.
You're right. And as I'm looking at the division makeup and looking at the teams in the conference, every one of them, with the exception of Clemson, have serious flaws. And there are flaws where if it goes wrong, you cannot overcome. Probably Wake Forest, maybe the second best team in this conference. But they've got serious flaws defensively.
Boston College. That say? I mean, what does that say? That Wake Forest is the second best team in this conference. No disrespect to Wake Forest. Well, but Wake Forest should not be, and we're not talking about winning a division because sometimes division winners, as we know with Pittsburgh, are not the second best team in the conference.
No.
You can win a division and not be the second best team in your conference. But Wake Forest will not win the Coastal and legitimately are probably the second best team in the conference right now. I mean, that says all you need to know right there. And I hate to play this game because we really don't know. I mean, it's hard to play the what would happen if they played this schedule or that schedule. I mean, that's not a fair game to play. No. But I think you and I can safely say that Wake Forest is not a top 3 team in any other Power 5 conference, including the Pac-12. Which people keep kicking over and over and over. Wake Forest is not a top 3 team in that conference. I don't believe so. So, I mean, you just summed it up there. And you can talk about the brands of Florida State being down. They're probably going to have a new coach. Miami, they, like I said, they've laid a lot of eggs. They've had their warts. Virginia Tech. But look at the new kids that we've talked about too. Syracuse. Syracuse was a team we were ready to crown the second best team. And they've had a rough year. They have not been able to get right at quarterback. DeVito has not been able to fill those shoes. They don't have an offensive line either. No. And look at Boston College and Steve Adazio. Every time you want to get behind Boston College, they just don't show up on weekends. And every time you want to get behind NC State and Dave Doran, they get smacked when it's a game when it's time for them to step up. So none of these teams, it's like teams keep getting the baton handed to them to please win 9 games. Please be a double-digit win team. Somebody step up, and everyone keeps fumbling the baton.
Well, like you want Virginia to be that team, but they're seriously flawed on the offensive end. They're so dependent on Bryce Perkins to make the big plays every time. And their defense just isn't as physical and as tough as it's been and as good as it's been the last few years. And they've had some injury issues there too. And you mentioned the brand names and how down they are. And I think that really hurts this conference. You got to have Florida State. Heck, I think you need to have Virginia Tech atop of the Coastal Division, and maybe you need Miami. I don't know. It seems like the brand's been tarnished quite a bit with Miami. But when I look at this, when I look at the makeup of the ACC right now, I look at teams like North Carolina, which really has the most exciting player in Sam Howell, and a coach that, let's face it, if Larry Fedora was still the head coach of North Carolina right now, I don't think they would have a win this year. I think Mac Brown's made that big a difference in year one. Of course, Sam Howell has something to do with that as well. But I just think of all teams, they're the one that probably has an upside in all this mediocrity in this league.
And I agree with you on that, John. But let me play devil's advocate with you here, though. North Carolina is 3-4. And North Carolina has lost 4 of their last 5 games. There is not a guarantee that they're even going to make a bowl.
But they've been. But the thing is, Anthony, they've been in those games.
I agree.
And I don't think that team would have been there last year.
No, I totally agree with you. I think they are one of the stories of the ACC, along with Louisville.
Yeah,
I think Louisville and North Carolina, both two of the biggest stories in the conference, because these are two teams that were picked to finish in the cellar. And these are two teams that right now are two of the most exciting teams to watch. But, John, they're still not very good.
No, they're not very good at all.
Not very talented. And they could both miss a bowl game. And that is not good when two of your best stories could still be 5-7. Now, I do think that North Carolina will make a bowl. I think Louisville still has a chance to make a bowl. But it's not guaranteed. In this conference, nothing is guaranteed. And with North Carolina, I don't see them winning out. They're not going to be 8-4. Could they be 7-5? Sure, they could be 7-5. 7-5 is a good story, and people like me and you would enjoy a 7-5 first year from Mac Brown. But is 7-5 moving the needle on a national scale? Of course not. And that's the problem. The problem is there are good stories in the ACC. There's great players in the ACC. There's reasons to watch the ACC. But you got to dig, and you got to look for those reasons. They don't hit you in the face like they do in other conferences. You have to find it, and people don't want to try to find a storyline.
Inside joke here. It's not my worry anymore with the ACC, but I have one other note.
No, it's not.
You mentioned Wake Forest and probably not even being one of the top three teams in the Pac-12, and probably not a top three team in any of the Power Five. Where would they be in the American Conference? Because that's a good football league.
I mean, that's a good conference. And, I like Wake Forest and I like what Dave Doran's doing, but
Dave Clawson.
Or Dave Claw. I'm sorry. Yeah. One of the other Dave. Sorry. The Claw offense has been good this year. The offense has been exciting to watch, but how do they stack up against SMU and Memphis? And even though UCF's down, UCF, look, I give them the same chance as I do with the schedule they have right now. And it's not that the ACC is bad. Here's the problem. It's not that I think the ACC is that bad. There's just no consistency.
No.
There's no consistency at all. And
right.
I think that your best coaches are at jobs where you can't win. That's the problem. I mean, right now, Dave Clawson, David Cutcliffe, those are two of the best coaches in this conference. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, Dino Babers, I put him up on that list too. Yeah. I mean, these are coaches that are the best in your conference that are at schools that are extremely disadvantaged. Your schools that have all the advantages have bad coaches right now or bad fits at those schools. I don't want to call them all bad coaches, but there's some bad fits. So that's the problem. When your best coaches are at your worst programs, resource-wise, this is what you get.
Yeah, can you imagine David Cutcliffe at a top-level school in the ACC? Just think if he was at NC State, what he'd be accomplishing there. And Dave Clawson, although he is the man with these type of schools, with limited resources, he's able to win. And but he can only win so much because of the depth issues and everything else that he has to deal with at a school like Wake Forest. You mentioned
exactly every coach that's really good in this conference has a built-in excuse of why they can't take that next step. And the next best coach may be Mac Brown. And John, he hasn't coached in almost a decade, and he's already one of the top-tier coaches in this conference.
We mentioned the American. I would be remiss if I didn't say something about the SMU Mustangs, ranked 7-0 right now, and first time they've been ranked since, I think it was 1986, pre-death penalty. To me, this is the feel-good story of college football this year, what Sonny Dykes has accomplished in Big D this year.
And you know what's so cool about it is the people in Dallas are all behind SMU, not just SMU Mustang fans, but the whole state is starting to get behind him. And some of that has to do with the Dykes last name. We've mentioned before, Spike Dykes is a college and high school coaching legend in that state, particularly in West Texas. So it feels good to see a Dykes winning in college football in Texas this year. And the way that offense is playing, they're exciting. I was not surprised at the fact, and I did pick Temple. I wasn't surprised at the fact that the offense had success. They played physically on defense, John. They were aggressive, and they came after Temple. They had a point to prove. And now you look at their schedule, that game against Memphis is looking massive in the next couple of weeks. Now, I will say this. Be careful this week. Be careful because you got Houston. Houston has been kicked around. They're having a down year. Dana Holgerson's 3-4. People are starting to think it was already a bad fit. But Houston, it's not like they graduated all that talent that had them as a preseason favorite to win this West. Be careful of this game, SMU. But yeah, SMU, I mean, they're a great story. They're fun to watch, and they're on national TV. It doesn't get any better than that.
Kevin Kane is their defensive coordinator, so shout out to him for that game plan last week against Temple. And Anthony, they're kind of, we mentioned Houston's a little down this year, but this is kind of a point in the season, 7-0, where you got 2 road games at Houston and at Memphis. This is where the hiccup could happen, but. The thing that's impressed me about SMU, and we've had their play-by-play voice on a couple of times on our rivalry and trophy game show, and he mentioned this how mentally tough this SMU team is. It's a refreshing change of how the team has been the last, I think, last 7 years. This is a resilient SMU team, and they've had some good things. I think that TCU win really catapulted this Mustang program.
I do too. I do too. And, you mentioned the resiliency that they have. I mean, we always talk about passing. Chad Morris really brought this SMU program up as an offensive specialist school in the last few years, and they had some receivers go pretty high, and now they're playing on Sundays in the NFL. Shane Buechele has done a good job transitioning as quarterback, but that running game, John, has been really impressive. I mean, Xavier Jones has had an outstanding year, and they found some guys as well behind him to help complement him. I love this freshman, TJ McDaniel. And TJ McDaniel, he's a freshman kid. He's not very big, and he's not that fast, but he runs hard. And every time he gets the ball, he's going to make it matter. And he's only going to get 4 or 5 yards a pop. They're going to run him up the middle, but he is a good grinding type of running back. And in games like Tulane, Memphis, these types of games coming up, even Houston, if it starts getting hostile, that's the kind of guy that they can lean to. Xavier Jones might be their bell cow, but they got running back depth behind him. And when's the last time you could say that about SMU?
Probably the Pony Express days back in the 80s. But here's the thing I'm impressed with is that defense getting in the opponent's backfield. You look at the top 12 sack leaders in the American, and 3 of them are from SMU. I don't remember an SMU team. And I've been watching the Mustangs basically all my life. I can't remember a defense, a Pony defense, as aggressive as they are. Patrick Nelson has made a living in the backfield. He's second in the American in sacks. He's fourth in tackles for loss. And again, SMU has multiple defensive players in the tackle for loss category too. So they're doing something right in Dallas, and it is resonating in Big D. And people in the Metroplex are in the Dallas area are really recognizing this SMU team, and they get a couple of breaks. I mean, we could see an undefeated Pony team in the championship game with a chance to get in the New Year's Six Bowl.
Oh yeah, they went out. They're going to a New Year's Six Bowl, and honestly, if they have one loss, depending on who it happens to and how they win the championship, they still have an argument for a New Year's Six Bowl. This schedule's brutal. I mean, this schedule's really tough. They got Houston this week, which Houston is a down team, but they're still really talented. And after that, they go to Memphis, which is a massive game. Following that, they get East Carolina, which you got to be careful with them. Then they get a bye week. Then they got to go to Navy, and you know how it is playing that offense. Good. I mean, they get a bye week before, but still 2 weeks is still a hard time to get ready for that offense. Then you end the year with Tulane. So this schedule is very difficult for them. Yeah, Tulane is very good. And Tulane, that game could still be a chance to win the West. I mean, they if they slip up one more time, that game will be for the West for SMU and Tulane. So it's going to be hard for SMU to run the schedule. And if they do, then guess what? You get either Cincinnati or Temple. So, and UCF is still lurking around too, although I don't think UCF will win the East. But no. How good is this West Division? I mean, this West Division right now with SMU, Navy, Memphis, Tulane, those are 4 really good teams with 4 head coaches, at least 3 of the 4 that are probably going to be linked to a lot of jobs this year. Now, I don't know if Sonny Dykes is going to get a big-time job. And, of course,
I think he's happy Navy,
he's going to be limited and probably not going to leave, but their names are going to pop up, and they should pop up. I mean, these are solid coaches, and this is a good division. Better than the ACC Coastal, let me say that.
And a team winning the division, the West Division of the American, an ACC team winning that would be very difficult too.
Wake Forest has a hard time navigating this division. Let me tell you.
Yes, they do. Let's move on. I'm sure you are passionately involved, Anthony, being the resident Crimson Tide fan, in the third Saturday of October, which was a 9:00 kickoff for us here in the Eastern Time Zone. And you saw where Jared Garantano got his face mask yanked by his head coach, Jeremy Pruitt. Now, you watched it. Tell me what happened.
So basically, and I'm sure most people have seen it, but in case you did not see it, Tennessee had the ball. They were down by 2. They were down by 15 points in the fourth quarter, 4th and goal at the 1. And Tennessee decides that they're going to run off tackle. They're going to pull their right guard, and they're going to try to jump over the middle. So Garantano, they break, and they do a quick snap at the huddle. So they break, run up to the line quick, and Garantano thinks there's an opening there, takes a snap, and just runs a QB sneak up the middle. Now he reaches the ball over the pile, and when he does, he fumbles, and Travion Diggs for Alabama picks it up and runs 108 yards back for a touchdown. When he goes to the sideline, that's what everybody's talking about. So Jeremy Pruitt, very upset that his quarterback decided to freelance the play and do his own thing, gets on to him and asks him what's he doing and starts chewing him out. And he grabbed his face mask with his hand for about a second, lets it go, and chews him out. Everyone's talking about Jeremy Pruitt crossing the line. Now, this is going to be an opinionated thing, John. Some people will think he went too far. Some people will say, get over it. This is football. That's your opinion. I'm not going to change your opinion on that. But what I do want to clear up are 2 things. First thing I want to clear up is the broadcast for ESPN immediately, once it happened, showed it and made the comment, why is the coach yelling at the kid for doing what he was told? Now, we learned later that he did not do what he was told. He got yelled at because he didn't do what he was told. But that clip got clipped off and put all over Twitter. So Twitter trending, coach grabs player's face mask is going all around the country. And when you watch it, the announcer's making it out like the coach just lost his mind and starts ripping the kid's neck off. So that was not a good look. The other thing to point out, Jeremy Pruitt was asked this week, Maurer, their starting quarterback, Brian Maurer, got knocked out in this game, and he got sent to the locker room in the second quarter with concussion protocol. He will not play this week against South Carolina. And everyone has asked Jeremy Pruitt what's going to happen at quarterback this week, and he's saying we'll see what happens. He's not committing. I'm going to tell you now, I think we've seen Jarrett Garantano take his last snap at Tennessee. I think he transfers at the end of the year. I don't think he's going to play for the rest of this season unless necessity for injury or something like that. I think he's probably done, and it's probably better for the player, for the coach, for the team to just part ways, because this has just been a marriage that just hasn't worked.
Even though Jeremy Pruitt in his press conference on Monday had great things to say about Jared Garantano, and so he still believes in him. You think that it's a relationship that cannot be repaired?
I do. I think this is a relationship that you can't mend, because if you read between the lines and you've watched Jeremy Pruitt's press conferences, he has been on Jared Garantano all season. And he basically, which I don't think he meant it this way, John, But last week, I think it was his Tuesday press conference after practice, he essentially blamed their record on Jarrett Garantano. He said, if we had better quarterback play, 2 of these losses are wins. Well, the 2 he's talking about was when Jarrett Garantano was starting. So there has not been a lot of trust in that relationship the whole time. And look, everybody saw what happened, and I'm sure Jeremy Pruitt got told, hey, this is a bad look. They're going to get his back at Tennessee. They're going to support the head coach, and it wasn't a big deal. But, the media and the fans around the country, particularly non-Tennessee fans, were trying to make it a story that, of what happened with him and Garantano. So he had to play a little bit of damage control in his press conference. But they tried to bait him to cross that line and put faith in Garantano, and he would not do it. And that tells you all you need to know right there. I think it's done.
So when I saw this, I had Frank Kush flashbacks because there's a very famous video of Frank Kush back in the 70s grabbing I think it was a kicker's face mask back in the 70s. And he got a reputation of being kind of difficult to deal with. And I think it somewhat led to the ending of his long career at Arizona State, although he moved on to the NFL and still had some crazy sideline moments. But I'm sure there were other instances where face masks were grabbed. It just wasn't in the media saturation era that we're in now.
Absolutely. I mean, don't forget, remember when Lou Holtz grabbed Jerome Bettis by the sideline and walked him 30 yards?
Yeah, I remember that.
He led him like a horse down the side of the field. Yeah, and I'll give you a good example. It wasn't a face mask grab, but don't forget 2010, I believe, was the famous Nick Saban spanking A.J. McCarron on the sideline. Remember that on the Thursday night game, I think against Georgia State, where A.J. comes in mop-up duty, throws an incompletion on 3rd down, comes off the field, and Saban spanks him 7 times. Yeah, I mean, these things have happened, and social media wasn't as big of a deal then. So, tempers flare. It's one of those things. But long-term looking forward, I think Tennessee right now has their quarterback, but I think he's in concussion protocol, and I do not think Jarrett Garantano is going to be involved by next season.
Of course, this is the week that Anthony and I usually don't talk to each other because Alabama and Arkansas are playing this week in, I believe it's in Tuscaloosa, right? Yes, it's in Tuscaloosa.
By the way, I always talk to you. I have no ill will towards this game. Why would I?
Why should you? Because what's been making the rounds on Twitter and everywhere else in social media has been that botched fake punt by Arkansas, and to me, that's just the whole way it looked. It's just an epitome of what Razorback football has been like, I guess, since the John L. Smith era. I mean, is that the new low moment for Razorback football?
It summed up this season really in a nutshell. Okay. And honestly, the Chad Morris tenure, to be honest, which I hate because I still believe in Chad and I still think Chad can get this thing right. But yeah, that wasn't a good look on a run that hasn't been great so far for him. It did, though. I will say this: between that botched punt and the Garantano, whatever you want to call it, play going 4th and goal, gave us the buzzword of the week in college football, John. Did you pick up on it? Because I've heard it used by 7 different people watching both plays. The buzzword of the week was players going rogue. That is the buzzword of the week. Jarrett Garantano went rogue. The Arkansas punter went rogue. Players just going rogue this week on their head coaches. So if nothing else, your team helped give us the buzzword of the week.
Well, I'm glad we could contribute something. We've kind of reviewed what we think, our opinion, what happened over the Saturday. It's time to look forward to the game.
Let's just skip the Tua injury. We don't need to talk about that.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about the Tua injury. Of course, he won't be playing against Arkansas, so does it matter?
Not really. No, it doesn't. But
you think you could quarterback Alabama and win the game?
Maybe. Well, I don't want to put that. I don't want to put Arkansas down that bad because then watch they're going to upset Alabama. So I'm not going to talk that much trash. But Mac Jones should be fine this week against Alabama or against Arkansas. But look, Mac Jones looked nervous against Tennessee. He came in the second quarter in a big rivalry game in primetime. So I mean, yeah, nerves are going to be there, but he did not look very good. He was very shaky. So I expect a lot of running, a healthy. Feeding a Najee Harris this coming up Saturday, but long term, this is a story. I mean, Tua gets a scope, on Sunday on his other ankle, and it's going to be 2 to 3 weeks of rest. He will be healthy and ready to go for that big LSU game coming up, but that'll be his first game back, and he will not be 100%. So this is going to be something to keep an eye on in the next couple of weeks. And I will say this: a lot of people are saying, John, that this lost him the Heisman. I don't think so, because spinning it the other way, if you're looking positive, if he comes back in his first game from having, a scope and he goes off and they beat LSU, to me, that makes it an even better Heisman story. Yeah. So I think that the Heisman Burrows Tua battle still alive, but you're not getting 100% Tua in 3 weeks. So there's going to be a lot of intrigue coming up in this game that's going to build by the day.
And, of course, if anything happens to Mac Jones, well, there's Tua's brother ready to take the reins.
Fans are ready for Talia. Well, you got Tua's brother, Talia Tagovailoa, back there, and you got Paul Bear Bryant's grandson, Paul Tyson, back there.
Yes.
So, which, by the way, don't sleep on Paul Tyson. A lot of people are ready to call little Tua the quarterback next year once big Tua graduates. Paul Tyson is impressing. I'm telling you, scout team guys love Paul Tyson. So don't sleep on Paul Tyson. His Alabama story might just be beginning, John.
Oh, plus he's got the bloodlines, the winning bloodlines for that program. That's interesting. Okay, well, again, we talked about last week. Let's look forward. But before we do that, Anthony and I want to get tickets to the Arkansas Alabama game and kind of rib each other at the game. And Anthony, where are we going to go to get those tickets?
John, we're going to go to SeatGiant.com. And since I have bad internet connection, I'm going to let you order them. And when you order them, you're going to type in a promo code. And what would that be?
That would be the letters SDH. Because if you type those in, it helps you and it helps us. That's SeatGiant.com.
And we're all about people helping people. That's right.
That's right. Game's coming up.
Hey, what's going on, y'all? This is Rock at the What's Up Falcons podcast, and I'm joined with my boys. My boys in the house. Where you at?
Yeah. What up?
Oh, gee, and we have Q, and we have Hoop in the house.
Q's here, the most beloved guy in all of sports entertainment.
Indeed. Hey, y'all, we want to thank everyone for listening to us, and if you want to listen to some great Falcons information, check us out on the What's Up Falcons podcast. Right, fellas?
Right. Sure. Hey, we here every week, baby.
We keeping it real, so check us out there on Twitter. Holla. Peace.
Subscribe to the What's Up Falcons podcast on iTunes and SoundCloud. Listen to the What's Up Falcons podcast at whatsupfalcons.com.
The online sports guys would love to hear from you. Go to our Twitter page at OSG Sports for a comment, rant, or just whatever's on your mind about college football. Now, back to the College Football Debrief. The debrief is over. Time to preview the games as the CFB on OSG continues. Here's Anthony Goldman and John Wilkerson.
Okay, Anthony, let's start off with a really great SEC matchup in Death Valley and Baton Rouge. Auburn and LSU. Auburn coming off that huge win over Arkansas. LSU coming off a win as well over Mississippi State. Both offenses have been playing really well. Auburn's defense, I think, has been a shining light for the Auburn Tigers. I can't wait to see that front seven go up against LSU's offensive line and give Joe Burrow a little bit of a pass rush. I know Burrow's got the escapability and the confidence right now, but I think that's going to be an intriguing matchup to watch.
It's funny, John. We have a team that's ranked number 9 in the country, has 1 loss, and they are getting no respect in previewing this game coming up. Nobody thinks that Auburn's going to win this game. And I understand that the Florida game was not a good look offensively, but Auburn has a lot of talent, particularly on defense. And if I'm playing the other side of the fence, John, I think Mississippi State may have shown the blueprint of how to slow down this passing attack of LSU. And let me tell you what I mean. Mississippi State did a good job of playing press man coverage and sending stunts on the defensive line early in that game. And when they were able to stuff that line, when they got to Joe Burrow, he did not respond well to that pressure. Now, Mississippi State don't have the horses to do that all game, but guess what? Auburn does. And I think Kevin Steele is going to study that tape. I think that's going to be their game plan. I think you're going to see a lot of press man in this game, a lot of shoving at the line, and some different looks and stunts through the front seven. I don't think they blitz every time, but I think they show blitz most of the time. And I think they also do some twists on the defensive line too. If they can do that, I think they can get the Burrow. The key to me, if I was a defensive coordinator and I'm facing LSU, I'm going to give Joe those 30-yard passes. And I'm going to tell him, if you can beat me deep, then good for you. I'm not letting you go intermediate to underneath. You ain't getting it. So I think that's what you're going to see in this game. And if they can do that, I think they can stymie this offense a little bit. Now, the key, though, can Auburn score? And for Auburn to win this game offensively, I think the recipe, John, is Bo Nix needs to have under 30 pass attempts. And if he does that, that means they're laying on the run game. I thought they got away from the run game way too easily against Florida. Dan Mullen, I know the offense isn't always pretty, but one thing you got to give him credit for is he will beat his head against a wall until that offense runs the football. And sometimes it's painful to watch, but eventually they get those yards on the ground. And I think Gus has to rely on that ground game in this one. He can't just give up on the run game like he did against Florida. If they do that and they keep Bo's pass attempts down, then maybe he can hit the key passes that they need and stick into this game. There's a lot of interesting storylines in this game to keep an eye on, but those are the two big ones for me.
And obviously, Auburn's had some injury issues at running back. Bobby Whitlow's out for the game. So you got Cam Martin, Malik Miller, Sean Shivers. You got a lot of guys there they can use that have to perform for Auburn if they're gonna have any kind of success against LSU. But I think you're right. That matchup with putting pressure on Joe Burrow is going to be fun to watch, at least on my end, when I watch this game on Saturday. We move on.
Yeah, that's going to be the matchup to watch.
We move on to the Big Ten, Wisconsin, Ohio State. Wisconsin's going to come in the horseshoe angry and hoping to avoid a 2-game losing streak, which would all but kind of stymie their playoff chances. Ohio State is just a machine right now and arguably could be the most complete or the best team in the country right now, or at least on a very, very short list. They're at home, and can Wisconsin recover after an unexpected loss in Illinois?
Well, that's going to be the question, and of course, no one's going to give them a chance. I don't have the lines in front of me right now, but I guarantee you Vegas probably does not like the Badgers very much. Well, there you go. They're 2-touchdown underdog right now to Ohio State as we record this. But Wisconsin, they're going to do what Wisconsin always does. And one thing about Ohio State, if you look back, the losses that they've had in Big Ten play have usually been against teams that can run the football, sit on the ball, and play physical and muck it up. And that's what Wisconsin's going to try to do in this game. Now, it being at noon, I benefits Wisconsin. I think that benefits Ohio State. But being on the road, of course, for Wisconsin doesn't help either. But they're going to come ready. They're going to be motivated for this game. And I think it's going to be interesting to see what the defensive plan is on how to attack this offense. Because right now, Ohio State is hitting people in the mouth. And by the time the second quarter gets around, they're out of reach. I mean, teams haven't been able to even stay within arm reach of them, which is similar, to be honest with you, to what we saw Alabama doing to teams last year. But guess what, John? When Alabama finally had teams that could hang with them a little bit and go the distance, they didn't respond well in some ways. And that's going to be the question about Ohio State. Justin Fields, he looks great right now, and he's very comfortable in this offense that Ryan Day's running. How is Justin Fields going to be able to handle a game that's tight going into halftime, that's tight in the middle of the third quarter, when J.K. Dobbins can't run the ball and carry the load and they have to get that third and long? How will he handle that? Those are the questions that we need to see. Now, I don't know if Wisconsin can ask those questions, but that's what we need to see from this Ohio State team, and that's going to be the job of Wisconsin to see, can they get them in those situations?
I say that Ohio State's been a machine this year. They lead the conference in total offense and total defense. So they're racking up yards and they're preventing yards. And but Wisconsin is up there defensively as well. Third in the conference in total defense. And so this might be the best defensive team that Ohio State has faced this year. No doubt, probably one of the more physical teams they've faced, the Ohio State offense has faced this year.
Oh, absolutely. Wisconsin, they're going to fight them in the trenches. And I think that Wisconsin can play with them in the front seven. They actually have a good pass rush. The problem, though, John, they don't have the speed in the secondary. And you can only muck it up so much. But if they can't keep this game in a phone booth, once Ohio State gets that ball in space, they're going to break plays. And I think the big plays are going to be the difference because Wisconsin, they just can't contain that speed.
Staying in the Midwest, Michigan and Notre Dame at the Big House, prime time. And what I keep reading is if Michigan loses this game, this is kind of the beginning of the end, or maybe the telltale sign that Michigan needs to perhaps look beyond Jim Harbaugh, and maybe this is kind of the end of the road or the Harbaugh era at Michigan. Do you see this Wolverine team coming out fired up and with a chip on their shoulder, taking on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish?
I think Michigan is going to be as fired up for this game as they will be for any game all year other than, say, Ohio State. I do think the Big House will be rocking. It's prime time. The players are going to try to respond. They tried to have a positive spin out of the Penn State win, and instead of focusing on the loss itself, they tried to focus on the comeback they had in the fourth quarter where they came back, they made it a touchdown game, and they kept fighting hard. The offense did not give up, and all that sounds fine and dandy, but this is not a very good-looking team, John, if we're being honest. Michigan, and don't forget, this Michigan team was picked by a lot of people. Now, not me and you because we actually know stuff, but a lot of people were picking this Michigan team to be a playoff team. Am I wrong? Remind me of that.
Yes, you're right, but we didn't.
No, we did not. But a lot of people were. A lot of people thought this team was the runaway favorite. This was the year for Jim Harbaugh, and Ohio State was finally going to take a step back. And that narrative lasted like 3 weeks, and then it went away. Now, I will say this. Michigan's only lost 2 games, and they lost to a good Wisconsin team. Not a great Wisconsin team, but a good Wisconsin team. And I think a good Penn State team. I don't think Penn State is great, but I think Penn State is a good football team. They're unbeaten right now. And Michigan lost on the road. Nothing to be ashamed of. Both their losses have came on the road, and this game's at home. The problem, though, with Michigan, their offense is still just such a guessing game. I mean, Shea Patterson has taken so much heat for the way he's played at Michigan, and I still feel like when I watch him, he's playing with one arm tied behind his back. I really do. I mean, they don't have a running game. They try to run Charbonnet, but he's not a Big Ten running back. He's not your Michigan running back that can take the offense and put it on his back. And they've gotten more into running spread tendencies. They have, but they're not doing a whole lot of misdirection or any kind of movement in their formations. Their formations are pretty basic. And I don't know if they're basic because this is the first year of Josh Gaddis calling plays, or this is the first year of this offense running this scheme, but they are not running an exotic style at all when they're in shotgun. They're just running shotgun plays and sending, one dude out on the screen and a couple dudes on slant. That's all they're doing.
If they weren't in shotgun,
open it up a little more.
If they weren't in shotgun, it's almost as if the offense of Bo Schembechler ran in 1971.
Right. And I do think this. Now, I think if you went back and you watched Michigan in September, they were literally running the exact same offense just out of shotgun. And I think during their bye week a few weeks ago, they tried to add some more window dressing to it. But I still don't think they've opened up their offense. They're not running a very spread offense to me. And I think that's the problem with them. Now, defensively, they're playing in this game. And that's the thing. Defense is going to show up for Michigan. They're going to it's going to be Ian Book against this Michigan defense. That's the story of the game. Ian Book is quietly having a very good year.
Yes, he is.
I think Ian Book is really starting to impress NFL scouts, not really with his talent, but with his awareness and with just his durability and the coaching factor that Ian Book has. He's going to be a very solid backup quarterback in the NFL in the future, I think. So he is doing a good job for his future, but I like Notre Dame in this game. Notre Dame just has more weapons on offense. I mean, Tony Jones Jr. is doing a good job running the football for them. Ian Book is doing a really good job, not just throwing the ball, but protecting the ball. And Notre Dame's just very comfortable. And I think when this game becomes a dogfight, Notre Dame knows that they can pull it out in the end, and they believe that they can win this game. They never think they're out of it. And I think Michigan, when they have to come down in the end and score a touchdown, I don't know if they can. I don't know if I trust the play calling. That, to me, is the difference.
Yeah, I'm just curious, though, because we talked about Josh Gaddis, the offensive coordinator, and his play calling duties. Do you just kind of feel like he's constantly looking behind his back at Jim Harbaugh, when he's making these calls, and a little gun shy about opening things up and getting more exotic on offense?
I think that is probably what's going on. I would like to know how much meddling Jim Harbaugh is doing in this offense, because, I mean, John, he said it in the offseason. It was hard for him to give up this offense to Josh Gaddis and make this radical change. This is a radical change of philosophy from what Jim Harbaugh was used to. I mean, we're going from West Coast to spread, and Harbaugh didn't like it, but he felt like he had to get with the times. Well, I don't know if they've actually embraced it, which we already talked about. And you have to wonder how much of that is going on. Don't forget, they have a guy who's never called plays before calling plays for the first time. How much is Jim Harbaugh going to trust that? I think Harbaugh has probably meddled about as much as he's going to. If he was going to take it over, he probably would have taken it over in the bye week. And to his credit, right or wrong, I mean, it seems like they doubled down on the spread and they committed even more to it. Yeah. I just don't know if they committed enough. And if they lose this game and they lose the season ender to Ohio State, they're going to be looking for another offensive coordinator. I don't think Josh Gaddis will see year 2. And Jim Harbaugh is going to be back, but if he's going to be back, they're going to have a new OC. It'd be interesting if this marriage does not work. Does Jim Harbaugh commit to the spread for the Michigan program, or does he decide to start over again in the future? Now, that's a long way away, and we'll see what happens. I mean, maybe Josh Gaddis gets it right this week. They go off, they beat Notre Dame, and this offense is clicking, and they finish the year strong. We'll see. But as of right now, it has not clicked.
All right, Anthony, I turn it over to you for lightning round.
Okay, John, let's start off with the lightning round this week. And I'm going to try to move through these as quick as we can. For our first game, I'm going to throw this one out real quick. We mentioned it earlier. Thursday night, SMU at Houston. Are the Ponies on upset alert, John?
I don't think so. I think this is a mentally tough SMU team. I think it's one of the best SMU teams defensively I've seen in a long time. I'm going with the Ponies. They'll win it by a touchdown.
The run game's the difference from SMU, but be careful. This is going to be a dogfight. Houston's going to give their best showing of the year. I think SMU pulls it out, but I think it is a nail-biter. All right, Friday night, USC, the team that people love one week and hate another week, they head to Boulder to take on the Buffs. What do you think, John?
I think Southern Cal coming off a big win over Arizona. I just think they've got the superior talent over Colorado. And I know Boulder is a tough place to play, especially on a Friday night. But I'm going to go with the Trojans.
Yeah, Colorado has really had a hard time playing with consistency this year. I don't think they show up week in and week out. I think USC wins this game because Colorado are just having a hard time finding consistency on offense. Okay, let's go to the Big Ten in a game that I'm sure is a trophy game that you're about to tell me about. Illinois at Purdue, John.
It's the Purdue Cannon.
I thought it was. Now, is that the one that was in somebody's barn for like 20 years until they dug it out? Correct me if I'm wrong.
I think so, but you'll have to listen to the Trophy Game Show, Rivalry and Trophy Game Show to find out.
That's what we call a tease.
Exactly.
So who gets the cannon?
Who gets the cannon? Let's see. I'm going to have to go with Purdue in this one. I think this Purdue team is kind of wounded simply because the big things were supposed to happen to this team, and it hasn't. And they had a pretty good nucleus coming back. So I think Illinois kind of rested on their laurels. I'm going to go Purdue by a field goal.
I'm taking Illinois and Lovie Smith in this game.
You like the Illini.
Hey, man, this zone defense that Lovie Smith ran last week, I think it's going to work against Purdue as well. I mean, I like their young quarterback, but he is mistake prone, and they did a good job of disguising their safeties and their coverages in last week. I think that pulls over to this week. I think Illinois continues to good mojo and gets the win here. The ACC Coastal, our favorite division ever. Miami at Pittsburgh, John. What are your thoughts?
Can this game end in a tie? A 0-0 tie?
By the way, this is going to be a horrible game. Please don't watch this game. This is going to be the cure for insomnia.
I mean, think of the poor football fans in Miami right now. The Dolphins are tanking for Tua, and the Hurricanes are nowhere near where they were years ago. Pity the poor football fans of Miami, but I tell you, 6-3 is kind of a score in this game. I want to go with Pittsburgh simply because they're at home and they'll be playing in front of friends and family at Heinz Field.
Yeah, I have no idea on this game, and I really don't care, but I'm going to go Pittsburgh. I'm going to go Pittsburgh in this game as well. I didn't say that the lightning round always made sense. All right, let's go to an actually could be a fun game. This could be an interesting game if you're looking for something to sink your teeth into around 3:30. Arizona at Stanford in a game that two teams that are kind of starting to find their footing, John. I think they're getting good late.
Yeah, and isn't Stanford a big disappointment to you?
They are, but they're quietly getting better. I think that they're growing a little bit. I like them in this game. This young defense, they were so unathletic in September when they were losing all those games in the national spotlight. They've put a lot of freshmen in, and those freshmen are starting to play well. I think Stanford is finding themselves a little bit. I like them in this game.
I'm going to go with Stanford too because I agree with you. I think they're playing much better. The freshmen have gotten some confidence now, and they're at home. And I'm just not impressed with Arizona. Go with the Cardinal.
All right, let's move on. Oklahoma State heads up to Ames to take on the Cyclones, a team that now people are starting to say could make it to that Big 12 title game, John.
Yeah.
If they're going to make it, they got to win this game. What do you think?
Iowa State looks really good right now, but Oklahoma State has just been inconsistent, wouldn't you say, this year? I like the makeup of that team, and you and I were both high on Oklahoma State at the beginning of the year. But right now, they're just very inconsistent. I love their running backs, but they've lost 2 games in a row to Texas Tech and Baylor. I just got to go with Iowa State because they've got some major mojo right now.
They do. Iowa State right now are feeling good about themselves. They look much the better team in this game. And Oklahoma State is just not playing with consistency at all. They are the definition of a 1 step forward, 2 steps back football team.
No kidding.
With that said, though, I think they get this win. I think that they get it right. They right the ship. Spencer Sanders is a turnover machine, but he also puts up a lot of yards. And at some point, he's going to stop turning the ball over 2 or 3 times and keep the yards without the turnovers. And when he does that, look out for this offense. But I think Chuba Hubbard and the explosiveness of Oklahoma State, I think that they run away from Iowa State in this game. It's close, but I'm going to go Cowboys for the upset.
See, all right, let's go I wanted to pick Oklahoma State, and because of Chuba Hubbard, because I think he can get some chunk yards against that Iowa State defense. But Iowa State right now is just a team that's got some really good mojo. They're at home. And I've got to go with the Cyclones. And I got to tip a hat to Oklahoma State last week, breaking out those throwback OSU helmets and jerseys that I remember back when I was a kid. That reddish orange look, that Terry Miller with sport back in the mid to late 70s. So that was fun to watch.
Yeah, they are sharp looking, no doubt. Okay. Moving on, John, Washington State at Oregon. Oregon coming off a game last week where they won probably the best game of the week, maybe one of the best games of the year. Outstanding game. Do they bounce back or are they on upset alert?
No, I think they bounce back fine, especially that they're at Arlington Stadium this time. Washington State's been a big disappointment this year. So I got to go with the Ducks.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm going to go with Oregon to win this game. They looked really impressive last week. I thought that they played probably one of the best games that I've seen them play in quite some time. Mario Cristobal's team really fought well to get that win. I think they win against Washington State as well. And finally, John, to wrap it up, it's time for our hipster game of the week, the game that no one will talk about, but diehard fans will love to watch because it's different and it's got juicy storylines in it. Now, I'm going to make a new rule. Last week, we picked SMU, or excuse me, no, we didn't. We picked Tulane and Memphis, which was a good game, but it was on ESPN2. And I was like, you know what? That's just too easy. It's too easy to pick a game. So the new rule is the game cannot be nationally televised. It has to either be on a regional channel or it has to be streaming on the internet. So for that, John, this week for our hipster game of the week, I'm going to go to the ACC, and I'm going to Tobacco Road for the Battle of the Victory Bell with Duke taking on North Carolina in a heated rivalry right down the street from each other with two Hall of Fame head coaches, David Cutcliffe and Mac Brown. Has there ever been more pageantry in this game than there will be this year?
No, a couple of old guys going at it, right?
A couple of old guys coaching a couple of young teams. Both of these teams are covered with freshmen all over the place.
Yeah, you thought Mike Krzyzewski and Roy Williams were old. Now you got David Cutcliffe and Mac Brown.
Wow. I didn't even think about that, but this really is like the old white guys school rivalries, isn't it? For both sports. How about that? Who do you like in this game? Because this is an interesting one with Duke. They were really finding themselves running the offense. They've kind of ran like a strange power running / sometimes triple option-y looking scheme. And it's worked for a lot of games. It did not work against Virginia. Do they get it going back, or do you like Sam Howell and UMC to win after that 6 overtime thriller?
Yeah, I tend to like Carolina in this one because rivalry games are so hard to pick. This one is a kind of an emerging football rivalry. Now that Duke is kind of under David Cutcliffe has been very competitive and even a threat to win a division. But I just like Carolina in this one. I think Sam Howell is that it factor. And the North Carolina this year has a tendency to be in games, and I think they've got enough juice to win close games. This is going to be a really close game, but North Carolina rings the victory bell.
This is a rivalry game that, John, really well. This is a very underrated, heated rival, and it does not resonate very well nationally, but these two fan bases really get into it. And by the way, the winner of this bell rings the hell out of this bell.
Yes, they do. They spin that thing.
They ring it Non-stop. It is an annoying game to go work.
And they get to paint it their shade of blue.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. And I'm with you. I think it will be Tar Heel blue come Saturday. I think North Carolina, they got to find 3 more wins to make a bowl and really make this fairy tale season pay off for UNC. The one thing for UNC that I think is a disadvantage is that they're favored in this game. They're favored by 3.5. UNC right now is 3-4. All 3 of their wins came when they were dogs. How about that? They've won all 3 games that they were favored in. They've lost every game that they were favored in. How about that? The only game that they were a dog in and they didn't win was against Clemson. And you know how that game went.
Yeah, that was crazy.
So they play a lot better when they're dogs, and they're not a dog in this game. But I'm still going to go with UNC. I just think Sam Howell in this offense really bounces back week to week. Quentin Harris, I don't think he can throw the ball enough. And UNC, when they want to, can get a pass rush going and stuff the run. I think the Tar Heels win in a shootout, and they ring that bell all Saturday night. And that's your hipster pick of the week, John. And that is your lightning round for Week 9.
And we thank you for tuning in to the College Football Debrief. Some great information there. Anthony and I enjoy talking college football. We've got a trophy game show coming up. Tweaking Carolina will be part of that trophy game show. We've got a wagon wheel they're playing for in Division II. And so it's always a fun show to put together. Anthony, if you're game, you can rejoin us for the trophy game show. And so we might hear your voice on that.
Oh, I'd love to. The Trophy Game Show was born and bred from the debrief. That was where the idea for the Trophy Game Show came from.
It's a spinoff.
Because we love trophies. It is a spinoff. By the way, why do schools always play for one wagon wheel? Where are the other 3?
There's one in the MAC. I'm trying to think. Is it Akron?
It's Akron and, oh goodness, I believe it's Kent State. Yeah. I think it is Kent State. And I think
one with Utah.
Yes. Are they all the same wagon?
I think we discussed this last year. I think that the wheels were like different sizes and different shapes. Who knows? A lot of wagon wheels are played for, and many other strange trinkets that we explore throughout the year on our Rivalries and Trophy Game show. So look for that. That will be dropping this week as well. So
we need to learn more about these wagon wheels. So, like, when one wagon wheel goes bad, do they have all 4? So when one gets worn out, they just sub it out for the next wheel?
Well, you know what, Anthony? That's something for you to explore. You need to call these schools and do a wagon wheel special on the Trophy Game show. How's that sound?
Riveting. People can't wait.
That'll pull 100 downloads. So, hope you enjoyed the College Football Debrief. For Anthony Goldman, I'm John Wilkerson. So long, everyone.
Thanks for listening to the College Football Debrief. You can find this and past shows by downloading the OSG Sports app on your mobile device. Enjoy all of our shows from the OSG Sports Podcasting Network. The OSG Sports app is up and running. Download it today.